Welcome to Remix EQ Live, where we are amplifying equity with a mix of information, interviews, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and today I am live from Savannah, Georgia, where I live. So for those joining us today, please drop a greeting of choice in the comments. Hello, hey, how you doing? Let us know where you are joining from and the equity work that you are doing or aspire to do. And remember that Remix EQ Live is an experience that's meant to be shared. So I encourage you to hit the share button and invite your people, your network, your family, your friends, your peeps to join us for what I promise you will be a very exciting and fun-filled, informative show. And so while all those comments are flowing in and those invitations are flowing out, I want to remind you that Remix EQ Live offers us the opportunity to connect and build community around the equity work being performed throughout the world. And we do this by centering the work. That is, our guests, our viewers share examples of what they do in their role or position as a way to illustrate the innovative ways that they advance equity in the spaces in which they live, work, or play. So throughout the show, and in the comments, I invite you to share what you do to make the world a more just place. So today is the first interview show of season 2 of Remix EQ Live, and we are honored to have Dr. Kyla McMullen, co-host of Modern Figures and associate professor at the University of Florida, join our Remix EQ Live community. Today's topic: elevating Black women in computing. Oh. So, with that said and sung, I welcome you to the show, Dr. Kyla McMullen, and I invite you to introduce yourself. And as you do, share any career twists and turns that have led you to your current role.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erica. Yes, as you said, I'm an associate professor at the University of Florida. I'm in the computer science department. And I also have, as you said, Modern Figures podcast. I also have a scholarship program for computer science students. I'm involved in lots of different diversity and outreach initiatives. I'm the diversity outreach coordinator for my department. I've hosted a conference for Black people in computing. I've done so much. I've been affiliated with the Institute for African American Mentoring and Computing Sciences, or IMCS. I could just go on and on for days, but if it's about diversity in computing, I'll probably volunteer for it or help set it up, or I know who runs it. So.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think when we talked earlier, we had a conversation about the different career pathways that you have been on. So
Yes,
on the show, we
yes.
always try to normalize like twists and turns and
Oh, that's
twirls and
right.
swirls in our pathways. But I think when talking with you, I realized you had a different shape for us, parallel pathways. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I have two very different pathways. I would say, if you look at my CV, it looks like, oh, yeah, she got her bachelor's in computer science, master's computer science, PhD, went on to be faculty, but it's not exactly all that linear. For example, when I was finishing my PhD, and I will note that I just found this out yesterday, I'm still the only Black woman to earn a PhD at University of Michigan in computer science. During that time, I was about to drop out. I was like, y'all are crazy over here. But it wasn't linear. Like, I had interviewed for other jobs. I won't name the companies, but I had an offer from a company, a very big company that we all know and love, and search for things on, and I was ready to go. And yeah, it was not exactly linear. Even when I finished my PhD, I decided that I didn't want to be close to academia, so I was entertaining options other places. But even now in my role as a professor, it's almost like I have two different roles, because my research is in 3D audio and virtual reality and augmented reality. So we all see people or have those really cool Samsung Gear headsets or Oculus Rift and all those things where we can perceive these really cool worlds. So my work deals with enhancing immersion in these environments through the way of sound. So lots of really fun stuff we do. But then I'm also Black. So I see that, there is a dearth of people who look like me. And I'm also a woman. So I'm definitely involved in lots of initiatives to help make sure that there's more of us in computing. It's not that computing is so difficult and women can't do it. No, there's a toxic culture oftentimes that we need to overcome. There's information that often isn't given to us, that's given to other peers who don't look like us. So those are, I feel like, my two parallel like lanes for what I work on. So I kind of have like two jobs at the same time.
Oh my God. Thank you. And I'm sure you're not alone. I feel like there's probably many people who are in our Remix EQ Live community who feel like they're pursuing two careers or have like the job that's written on their job card and they do those
Exactly.
duties, as well as working to make their workplace or their field more inclusive and diverse. So I want to know, like, how connected do you feel that they are, your research in 3D audio, your DEI work in computing, and then how do you balance them both?
There's times that they're connected. So I had an opportunity to co-author a paper with two collaborators. One's at UTEP and one is at Peck, or is at Davidson College rather. And this one had to deal with how do we diversify VR research, because right now research is based on, like, when you do research, you perform it on a set of subjects. Most of those subjects are usually male, white, from industrialized countries. Like, we have this stereotypical image of who the user is, but we're not looking at anyone else who's outside of being a white male using this thing. So we wrote a paper on like a bunch of best practices and just how to, number one, starting with like engaging communities, for example, engaging other communities that particularly may not participate in VR research or may not know what VR research is, developing a rapport, making sure that things are created with the community in mind. Like, you don't create something for someone, you create it with them. If it's for their population, you don't happen to be part of that population. So there's about, like, I can share the paper with you so you can share with the readers. It's a really good read and it ends with 10 action items. I'm all about the action items. I'm not about theoretical. It's like, okay, what can you do on today to, make this better? So I can definitely share that with you. But that's one place where like the VR, AR, and the diversity part gets to coalesce. But other times, not as much. It doesn't really get to overlap. There might be small little pieces, but not a lot.
Well, we're glad that you can pursue both. We appreciate your brilliance and your commitment in that space. Oh, we have a comment. Hello,
Hi,
Brianna.
Brianna.
She's excited to hear the gems.
Yes.
Yes, and the gems shall drop. Yay! Thanks. And then for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Remix EQ Live, and we are amplifying equity through a mix of information, interviews, and inspiration. So after the introduction and hearing all that Dr. Kyla McMullen is doing, please invite others and tune in. And of course, please interact and share your experiences with us. So now we want to center the work, and this is an opportunity on the show for us to learn from Dr. Kyla McMullen of how she broadens participation in the field of computing. And of course, she's like, I'm all about those action items, and we are too. We love to see how you are making the DEI work actionable in the community that you're in. And so, Kyla, as a professor in computing, so with that hat on,
Mhm.
what are some examples of how you push the field of computing to be more diverse and inclusive?
Awesome. Yeah, I think just one, existing is who I am. Like, being a Black woman at the front of a classroom, can show all the other women and people of color that, hey, people who look like me do this. Oftentimes, representation is such a huge, huge thing. Like, I don't think I ever had a Black computer science teacher. There was this thing going around, I think, on Twitter a while ago that was like, name the grade where you had your first Black teacher. And, some people were like, hey, I never did. A friend said, hey, you were actually my first Black teacher. So, just literally my existence, one. Two, being a professor and being who I am in my space and being outgoing, I feel I'm uniquely positioned. And I'm also someone who likes community and likes to connect people. So I don't forget people when I meet them. So I might not contact you, but I have filed you away in a Rolodex where, let's say if I'm putting on a conference, so hosting, for example, the NSBC conference through IMCS. So NSBC was the National Society of Blacks in Computing. And we did that for about 4 years. And then, that COVID monster got us. But one way that I was able to do this as a professor is to use all those contacts, use all the people that I came up with while I was getting my PhD who are now doing awesome things, and be able to say, hey, bring all your people to this conference, because, it takes all of us to do the work. Even just making sure that people are seen. And I feel like as a person who cares, that goes a really long way. Like, you'd be surprised how many students will tell you, if you just sit down and have really frank and open conversations, and just if you're really just transparent with students, how much they'll tell you and how much they appreciate the openness. And that just goes for everyone, not just students of color. So those two, even being able to apply for grants. So I've applied for a grant through the NSF STEM program, and this is a grant that is aimed towards helping low socioeconomic students to be able to get scholarships to pursue in STEM. So I'm the PI for $1 million grant, where we're literally just giving top off stipends to PhD students in computer science at our university, to help them, because there's so many costs associated with graduate school. But on the other hand, it's not just the money. We also have a full scale program for professional development for them, because there's so much you're expected to know as a PhD student, or when you're in school. There's so many unwritten rules. Like, no one ever sits you down to tell you sometimes how to write a literature review, or how do you do your quals, how do you manage your time, how do you manage all these competing interests. Like, there's all of these things outside of class that you don't learn. So we put on a whole set of, we meet them at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. We do end of the semester activities. We just escaped the room the other week. So all of that to say, like, I like to be able to use my position as a professor to apply for resources, use the resources I have, and be present to help students.
Yeah. No, thank you. I love that. I love that you speak to each of those letters in DEI. I mean, first of all, your existence, in which we appreciate, but really be an example of how diversifying the field really provides role models and different perspectives. And I love how not only are you using those scholarships to like help those who just don't have enough money to really thrive in graduate school and focus that
Yeah.
energy, but you're teaching those unwritten rules. Like, you really are creating a way for those students to feel included, not just in their graduate program, but in academia as you
Yeah.
go on. So yeah,
And I
I
want to
think,
touch on too, like, academic reimbursement culture, because
okay.
it's like a two-way street, where you're told, okay, you need to go to these conferences and network and present your work so the field can know you. And then let's say the university is going to cover your costs, cool, but you need to put down the $2,000 for the hotel and the flight and the airfare and all of these things, and then wait the 30 to 60 days, for the university to pay you back. They assume that you have that money at the drop of a dime to just drop. And if you have to put on a credit card, they're not paying you back that interest. So, like, there's all these little like elitisms about the university experience that I know I experienced. And I'm like, okay, we got to fix this. We need to fix this. So I'm like, I'm not about to go into debt over this PhD over something that you said was free. So I always think about my pain points as a student, and I try to do the best I can to try to just make sure that other people can at least have those pain points lessened. Or I would love to be able to have just like a fund where we're saying, okay, we will pay for it and the school can pay us back, versus you having to do those things. So
No, I love that. I love that idea that you're reflecting on pain points and then how do you lessen that for others. I mean, I think that's really it's a practice in itself, right? And thinking about how to make spaces more equitable and how to make them more inclusive. Are there other ways, like through your role, like in the service that you do in the department, in which you work to broaden participation?
oh, definitely. So we just started an inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, or IDEA committee, at the college level as well as on the department level. So I'm a representative at the college level, and also I chair the committee within the department. So we are working on a series of town halls to listen, because our department is crazy. So I can't even have a good word for that. And they're very hurt. And there's lots of people who, for various reasons, we're just very, very disjoint. And I feel like if we start at the beginning and just listen versus trying to propose a bunch of things that we think will happen, like, oh, people need seminars, we need to just listen to let the students tell us what it is that they need. So I'm really excited about that. The National Science Foundation has actually started this BPC plan, which is broadening participation in computing. So they're instituting this rule that NSF grants in the CISE directorate, if you apply for something that's a medium and maybe a large, but no definite for medium, that you need to have a broadening participation plan. Like before they give you money to do your robotics, your theory, your whatever research, you need a plan for how you're going to also include other people from other populations in computing. Like how are you going to broaden the field? So I'm helping to write that plan for my department. So I'm really, really excited about that. I just came back from a conference about, getting that together. And there's so many cool ideas and best practices that I learned from other departments. So I'll be part of helping to not just develop it, but to implement it in the department.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I love
excited.
Example of how to institutionalize.
Yes, and I love the fact that the National Science Foundation is in a position to make change because people are motivated by money. Food, but also money. So if you tell someone that, hey, you may not care about diversity, but you need to have this diversity plan and tie into it. So the idea is like to have this menu of activities that the department is committed to. And when you write your proposal, you can then say, okay, I'm going to help with activities 2 and 4. So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel and host the world's worst summer camp because you really don't care, versus letting the people who actually know what they're doing begin it, but you can be a resource. You might be able to teach a module in the camp or apply for funds for the camp, or I don't know, call a school bus, like something that can work with your skill set, or maybe even develop software to organize the students. Like you can do something that's within the wheelhouse that helps with the effort, but you're not trying to reinvent the diversity wheel all the time.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think you gave us like many examples of how to broaden participation that can help students from low socioeconomic, students of color, women. And so now I want to zoom in on Black women in computing. Yeah. I know this is a focus of yours. This is why I invited you to the show. I'm very excited to hear about your perspectives and actions on this. So why Black women? What are the unique considerations for Black women in computing? And how does your podcast, Modern Figures, address these in order to elevate Black women in the computing field?
Yeah, I'll start with why Black women. So the first is because if you go, at least in my experience, if I were to go to a women in computing event, they leave out Black women. They're talking about white women in computing most of the time. And then a lot of the Black efforts are led by the male. So there's intersectionality. We're double minority. We are a population that is at the lowest end of the spectrum for 2 different areas. And people are not checking for Black women the way that they need to. And we are such a population, we can make $1 out of 15 cents. Black women are so creative. We are imaginative. We can create solutions. So I feel like this computing to me is a field where it's almost like artistry. It's about creativity. You're developing an elegant solution to a problem. And if I know anything, Black women are problem solvers. So I feel like, this is something that, really, really tugs at my heartstrings because we can do it. So then the podcast exists because I get asked so much like, oh my gosh, you were in computing. You must have had, an aunt or an uncle who encouraged you. Who did this? Nobody. Like I just saw a computer and knew I wanted to learn about it. So I know that like we come from all different walks of life. And so I want people to be encouraged to do computing who don't feel like they necessarily fit the computer science stereotype. Like if you watch a movie or TV, they have, oh, the hacker's here and they have like black hair and it's greasy and they're in the dark and they're eating Doritos and Mountain Dew and they're typing away. Like you have this image of what that looks like. And Black women probably don't connect with being that person. So I want to show and have people envision themselves in this role as a Black woman in computing, to also show the diversity of careers that you can have in computing, because it's not just all coding at midnight drinking Mountain Dew. There's so many different areas of computing that you don't know until you know. And then the fact that people who come from all different walks of life, they come with lots of different upbringings, are really successful. So you don't have to count yourself out because the first time you coded was in college, in that class, or you went through college, majored in something else, and then decided, hey, you know what, I want to learn computing. There's room for you too. So I want people to see all of the entrance points and not feel like, oh, I don't fit this stereotype that everyone has told me this is what computing is.
I I love like three things. I love all of it, but like one, I love how you talked about computing as being artistry and providing or creating an elegant solution. I think just in that description breaks all the stereotypes that we might have in our head around what computing or computer scientists do. And then I love that you're using Modern Figures as this platform to really showcase all the women who are actually doing these different types of computing careers and how they got there. And I think that's wonderful. I'm so excited. I've listened to it myself. I encourage everyone, whether you're interested in computing, you're interested in Black women, you're interested in podcasts, you should definitely check it out because it adds a different perspective. It adds knowledge. And broadens what we think computing is, and therefore can broaden who participates in it. So I definitely encourage you guys to check out the Modern Figures podcast. It's a great listen. Y'all are in season 3.
We finished season 3. Yeah, we're at 50 episodes. So we're starting to tape for season 4. So if anyone has any folks that they think would be awesome, please send them my way. We have a little form on the website. I also have to shout out my co-host, Dr. Jeremy Waysome. She is, if you think of us, we're very similar and very different. So, but she's the one who keeps the train on the tracks. And I'm the one who is like, ooh, squirrel. Ooh, what's going on? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. So we complement each other very well on the podcast. So it's a good listen.
Yes, I'm excited. Well, check it out. Check it out. So I wanted to take time in the show to celebrate a very special occasion for Kyla. I want to congratulate her. She has just achieved tenure and been promoted to associate professor at the University of Florida. So, woo! Yay!
Thank
I want to
you.
Kyla.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a big accomplishment. And even though I'm like, woohoo, it's actually real serious business being tenured. And so I would love for you to share with us what it means to be a tenured professor, like why it matters. And then how did your work elevating Black women, broadening participation in computing affect your tenure journey?
Yeah. So what tenure means is on the surface, a job that you cannot get fired from unless you like do something really illegal or like break the law. But it is when you're starting an assistant professor tenure track role, it's basically a 6-year job interview where the university is deciding if they want to keep you. And if they say no, you have to pack your bags and go. But if they say yes, then you have this job. Oh, there's my husband's in the chat. Thank you, honey. It's a job you can't get fired from, and it's basically security because the university sees that you are an asset. And the way that you prove this is through publications, through research, bringing in grants, service a little bit. So if you were to think of them as buckets at a Research One university, about 60-ish% of that is the research. So that's the publications, bringing in money. And then 30-ish is teaching. And then 10% is service. So that's anything from chairing a diversity conference to having, I don't know, being a science fair judge at a second grade school. Like there's such a spectrum for service, and it's the same checkbox. So all of that to say, it's important to have tenure because people like us need to be here to make the change. You can't make change from the outside. You have to be on the inside. And having the job security, in my opinion, helps to be a bit more candid about how I feel. So being able to tell people, hey, this is wrong, without thinking, oh, this person's actually going to vote on my tenure case, so I don't want to piss them off. Versus like, okay, now I'm past that and I can tell you how I really feel in a respectful way, but without any sort of fear of retribution. In some cases, like for example, I'm able to write tenure letters for people at other universities so that they can get their tenure. So that's the importance of tenure. And then the importance of the outreach work that I do to my tenure case, unfortunately, is nil. Like it's often thought of as counter to it. Like if you do too much service work, people will begin to think that you're not academically serious enough. And as I say that in this moment, I'm back to 2007 or 2008 when I was in grad school, and I passed my quals, and I didn't tell anyone that I was like, president of this Black organization and this and that. No one in the department knew, but I was told that, the department wants me to focus and stop working on so much of diversity work in order to do my work. I'm like, how do you know I'm not just do it? Why can't I do both? Why is it an either or that I'm not being seen? I'm not taken seriously as a scholar if I'm doing service work. So, and unfortunately, this is a full circle moment I'm just having right now. Like that was literally what I was told by a colleague, before getting tenure. Like you have way too much service going on. You need to stop. But also, I'm always told this by people whose demographics aren't impacted by service. Like these are people who have the privilege to see people who look like them in computing. So if they don't, help the next white man get into computing, there's 500 more. For me, I feel like if people gravitate towards you and you can help them, like for example, with our podcast, we have people who tell us, I got a scholarship to go to grad school to get it completely paid because I listened and used this resource you told me to. Like the way that we can impact so many lives is just so much more. Like you can't tell me to stop doing service if service does not matter in your book. So yeah, so it's not part of it's part of our evaluation, but not so much. Like you won't get fired if you don't do enough service, but you will get fired if you don't do enough research. So
yeah. Well, that feels like there's a show around that. That whole process. But we appreciate your tenacity and perseverance. And we're so excited that you got tenure and you were able to do it on your own terms, and you were able to do it by continuing to do service to the community and to bring in people who would have not even known that this was a pathway and wouldn't be able to contribute to like elegant solutions to the world's problems without it. So congratulations again. I'm so proud. I'm like, I know we just met, but I'm like, yes. Yes, it's really great to it's really great for you to have that security so that you can continue your research, but you can also continue your advocacy, right? And you can do that even with more fierceness than you're already doing because you don't have to think about that. So I wish you well. Yes, yes, I know that Black woman magic. I love it.
Yes. I was this close to wearing my Black Women Magic t-shirt.
Yes, I love it. Wait, so is Adi your husband?
So it's Dave, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, that's my husband. That's husband.
I look at support.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are like many of our Remix EQ guests, Kyla, even myself, like you identify with the community that you center your work in. You're a Black woman in computing, working toward equitable and inclusive spaces for Black women in computing. Could you remind us why it's critical for others, like those who are white and male, to also work toward diverse, equitable, and inclusive spaces? And how can they be effective allies in this work?
Yeah, no, it's so important for everyone to do this work. So one, having, diverse mindsets, diverse standpoints brings about diverse solutions. Like anytime you have lots of people who think differently, your solution to the problem is going to take into account so many different perspectives, and it's going to be that much better. So one, we need diversity of ideas, diversity of thought for the people. And also it's not the job of the marginalized to help pick themselves out of the mud. Like the people who have the privilege and have the power need to actually help in this space. And so one thing that people can think of, and it doesn't take a whole lot, you have to think about your sphere of influence. So like, what is it that you definitely can control? Don't think about the things that you can't control. And the first thing I would say even is to start with educating yourselves. There are lots of books about understanding the Black experience, especially relative to your situation. Don't run to your nearest Black person and ask them to explain to you the entire history of racism and redlining and segregation and Jim Crow and like all of these things. Like read a book. And once you have read the book, you can think about how these things are institutionalized in your own area, but also think about who you are as a person when you're an ally, when you want to exercise your voice. If you're an introvert, do introverted things. You can write, you can do things that have more effectiveness than trying to be this extrovert. Think about how much time you have, other, sort of commitments. What is your message? Who is it that you're trying to change? What are you trying to change? And so, number one, allies can use their own privilege to advocate for change. You have privilege in many situations where people of color do not. So recognizing that, and for example, many meetings where you can see a person of color suggest something in the very beginning, we should do this, and then the whole group circles back to that, but somehow it gets attributed to someone else in the room. So recognizing when this happens and saying, oh yeah, that's just like when this person said this at the beginning. So recognizing when those things are happening, listening to the stories of people who have experienced these things, and not from a combative standpoint. Don't ask if something happens where someone's like, hey, I feel like I've been marginalized. Don't try to say, well, was it because don't diminish their experience or their situation. You have to really, really listen. Even if you're in a place where you're able to purchase things, think about minority vendors in general. Like, I've been a part of just trying to add more minority vendors to our vendor system, so that they're just in the system as someone that we can purchase things from at the university or with the business. And being uncomfortable. A lot of this work is not fun. Like, there are difficult conversations. So approaching it from a point of, this is going to be uncomfortable, but what lies on the other side of this uncomfortable conversation is worth it, and recognizing that it's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. So, validating other people's experiences. You can make a YouTube channel if you're more outgoing. Become a mentor. If there's someone who is trying to get where you are, who doesn't look like you, I'm not saying just jump on that person and say, hey, I'm mentoring you, but offer them help with things sometimes. And, people will definitely appreciate it. So those are just a small piece, of what you can do.
Yes, small but mighty, right? I think that, like, you're like, it's a small set, but it really is a powerful set of ways to begin to be effective in allyship, right? And really help move it forward. So
Oh,
thank
hey,
you for sharing.
Brandy.
I love it. Just when hands are in the air, it just makes me do mine in real life.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Brandeis Marshall is shouting out Kyla. Yay! She's also going to be
Yes.
a guest on our show later this season at the end of
Yes.
October. So woo woo! I'm so excited. All
Awesome.
the computing data, people.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I appreciate that whole point around, like, understanding your sphere of influence, using your privilege to move to move this work forward. And so we have the final question. So you have dropped so much knowledge and examples and tips for us, and along the way, I think we've all been very much inspired by the work that you're doing in your journey. But I'd love for you, Kyla, to share with us what inspires you to keep elevating Black women in computing.
What inspires me? So it's a cycle, it's a circle. So there's a couple things. One is when I'm working on, my actual job, my research and stuff. Like, sometimes I'm like, this is crazy. These people are crazy. I want to go do something for Black people because I need more of us over here. So then I'll start, doing that. So that's one thing that inspires me. Just sometimes the lack of even just seeing us in certain spaces. And so I'll even be recharged. Like, let's say, after doing a podcast like this, or just talking to Black women who are achieving such great things, it gives me the energy to go back into the space where I'm like, okay, I can do this again. I'm recharged. So that's one. And then the other is literally just the stories of people. I like exponential growth. So I like the fact that I can do something one time, I can give a lecture or talk one time, and then lots of people say, oh, this thing affected me in all these different ways, and now I'm able to do all these different things. And you can just see it as a web of just like, all I had to do was one thing, and all of these people were affected. We are the dopest, as Brandy said. Like, it's just amazing. Like, I'm one of those people where I get so excited for other people's success. Like, it is my success. I'm the person that's at your birthday party, and I feel like it's my birthday because we're having a great time. So, like, for me, when I see other people just achieve the things that they didn't think that they could, like, it just excites me so much, because just helping people to connect the dots and just see things for themselves and helping them to overcome what they thought they couldn't do. Like that is all the gas that I need.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for fueling us. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Dr. Kyla McMullen.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. We appreciate you here. Last couple of weeks ago, I opened the season with a show on rally, and it was like rally as this is, Remix EQ Live is a rally, a place where we come together because we're interested in the same things, which is advancing equity, seeking equitable outcomes, but also thinking about what it means to rally. And,
I listened to that one.
Yeah, like we want to rally around you. We want to recognize the work that you are doing and the achievements that you have, and accomplishments that you have made. And we want to appreciate what brought you here and even your experiences as you continue to do that work, whether challenging or supportive. You have been pressing on. We've definitely learned a lot from you. I mean, we have so many very specific examples that I think that people can think about in their space, whether they're in academia, nonprofit, corporate America, and think about how do we create these more diverse, inclusive spaces so that everyone can feel like they are a part of the work being done. We feel your love for everyone, and we send it right back. And we hope, we always ask that you take care of you, and we hope that you do that, but we hope that our affirmations and celebrations of you also do the same. So we're here. Thank you for coming to our rally.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yes. I love it. It's so great. I'm so excited. I will be back on the 4th Friday in August with another interview show. We'll be talking about innovative funding and education, and we'll be remixing it up with Josh Edelman from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So tune in, watch your feed, check your inbox so you have details to tune into the next show. And until then, visit the Remix EQ Live webpage for past episodes and more information about our inspiring guests like Dr. Kyla McMullen and upcoming shows. And while you're there, please poke around the website and learn more about my business, Blue Knowledge, which advances equity in schools and communities. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And of course, I invite you to connect with me here in this space. Thank you to the Remix EQ Live community for your engagement, and your comments, and your encouragement, your rally around Dr. Kyla McMullen, which will keep us all inspired to make the world a more just place. We can't wait to have you back, Kyla, for another show and remix you with some other guests. We appreciate it. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and this is Remix EQ Live. See you next time.